exploration tool to figure out where. I mean, already it's helping me to see some things I'll share with you today. But yeah, to try to kind of use it as a perfect prediction tool is spreadsheets in startup businesses are tough. There's so many unknowns.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we can get started. I share here the agenda on the chat, on the Notion. I tried to put something simple together. And I like us to start just with maybe some team updates, if you guys have some. I guess, Gideon, you already kind of like provided one of them with these conversations with Mark, but I don't know if there's any others. I have one. I think it might be also a good habit for this type of calls that we at least take a couple of minutes to provide some context or make some communications about any progress or any insights from the TEC call for the rest of the team, right? And I think this will have more relevance once new people join the team, but as they won't be taking part on the TEC, it will be important to have this communication loop really present and really effective. So I like to take just a couple of minutes to kind of like go especially through this idea of the team structure, so we are all aware of it. I know, Nate, that you couldn't attend the TEC call last Friday, so I think it would be important for you to be aware of this, so we're all on the same page. But before I do that, maybe Nate, Tam, Gideon, I don't know if you guys have any other important updates to provide. We can just take like 5 minutes in these team updates.
No, nothing here.
I have just a quick one. Efra was asking me today about whether there's any update on this OP TEC article that I started a while back, and I put that on hold while we were figuring out what the strategy is. But I think it's time to come back to this thing. And actually, I think if we get this right, it could help to. We could use it in conjunction with the recruiting process. I mean, we should not hold up the recruiting process. Like, let's not do that. But it may be a good feedback tool, like to indicate that we're serious about OP. So I'm gonna start turning back to working on that article again, and it may be like towards the end of this week or early next week. I'd like to send it to you guys to just get some feedback, because I think this could be a really nice piece for us to signal our move and where we're trying to go this year.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. Looking forward to that. Nate, do you want to provide any updates on the events front?
Yeah, sure. So the original initiative to have multiple people hosting episodes on the TEC Twitter is advancing. So Nate, EC Crypto, and Dr. Nick have both agreed to at least post one episode a month on the TEC Twitter, and hopefully Octopus and the Tokenomes will follow. And so that's really good that we may have up to 4 episodes of different styles of content centered around token engineering each month. And then the TEC Beam is progressing. We have some uploads. I got approval from Jeff and Curious Rabbit to upload the Bonding Curve Research Group videos, and talking with a bunch of other organizations to actually upload theirs. I talked to Chris Catman for the CAD and block science, and looking to talk with OP as well. We also tested out the first live event feature yesterday with Bear, and that was pretty cool too. So that's all the updates I have so far.
That's great. Yeah, those are really great updates. Then I'll just give this like quick update. Yeah, maybe if you, Nate, have more questions about this, maybe we can have this conversation separately. But I'll just go through this pretty quickly. If you look at the agenda, I just shared here a little diagram of the team structure that I'm proposing, trying to simplify things a bit. Going from this idea of having 13 roles that are pretty specific, modular, and also part-time, like none of them have been full-time. Going from that structure to this structure of, having basically 4 main units and one general kind of like coordination unit. So these areas or these units could also translate into full-time positions at some point. For example, for the hires that we're looking for, if we could have one taking care on the program operations and one on the ecosystem development and communications, that's the goal, no? And then from these 4 units, other different type of initiatives or roles, positions can come from there. For example, I see the events being part of this unit of communications and ecosystem development. And just like that, we'll be able, I feel, to organize and to be able to fit any piece of work that we're doing into one of these areas. Then we have the people operations and finance. Those units, in a way, they have been roles that I've been taking on and that I'm willing to continue taking on, as they are not as big as the other two. And same thing with the general coordination. This is also kind of like another unit that I like to introduce, that in a way is having like either a group of people or just one person, that in this case, this has been like some of the work that I've already been doing, trying to kind of like be everywhere and to have like at least a decent idea of what's going on everywhere, and just try to help out and support all the other units. But that's like open. If we can create some sort of like team units for each of these, right, including the general coordination, and that's where the coordination with TEC also happens, like this sort of bridge between the TEC and the coordination team. That can happen that way as well. So I'll just stop there to see if that makes sense. If you want it, again, we can, I guess, follow up on this later. But just maybe if you have any questions or comments right now, first impressions, yeah, feel free to share. If it's clear, if it kind of like makes sense.
Yeah, I guess from the original chart, I like the idea of having these 4 broader categories and then branching down the roles from there.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. I think that's the goal. It's just a goal to try to simplify the structure of the team for us, but also for the new people that join, that they can easily understand where they are positioned and their responsibilities, and how is the structure working. Hey Juanca, good to have you here. The agenda, it's here. I just share it here on the chat if you want to take a look. And yeah, I think that'd be all. In terms of updates, I think now we could jump into the first agenda topic, that is just kind of like the revisiting once more the recruiting process. I incorporated all the feedback. I did some adjustments, also tried to make it and to maintain it more simple. So I like us just to maybe go over it, read it through, and maybe just have a round of comments or feedback, so we can keep moving forward. I'm hoping that this is kind of like more of the final version of it. There might be still a couple of details, but we can talk about that. So I would just like to ask any of you if you could just like share a screen and with the recruiting process, if that be possible, because I'm on my phone and doing the recording with my computer of the call, so I'm not able to share a screen.
I can do it. Do you have the link to the doc?
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
Just the agenda. Okay, sure, I'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I included the link to the recruiting process and also to the spreadsheet in the agenda, so you guys can access it through there. Nice, yeah. So let's maybe just take a couple of minutes to go through it. It's just basically divided in three stages or three phases. The first one I'm calling application and screening. And this is really interesting. This is really, I think it's already happening naturally in some way. But what I'm proposing is that we kind of like take this recruiting process gradually, and we open it gradually. First, with kind of like this first circle that I'm calling could be like past TEC contributors, so reaching out to them, or other type of people that we might know could be good fits for these type of positions. That
Sorry, I
way
just left
we
a
don't
note as you were writing. Yeah, I just left a note as you were writing it actually, and I wanted to. Are we suggesting there's a time delay between the first, second, and third circles?
I would say so. Yes, I think the goal for that would be to kind of like reduce the possible workload for the team to have to review like tons of CVs without any filter. I think that if we were not to find anyone in the first circle, then that's when we decide to move into the second circle. If we don't find anyone there, we move to the third circle. And the third circle at the end is like when we actually do it like super public and we do promotion through social media and we actually open it to the broad public. But before that,
So
I think we'll do. Yeah.
The only problem I see with that is I consider forum and Discord and Twitter our community. I mean, the job portals, maybe not, but I think 1, 2, and those 3 channels is just that's just the community, right? Yeah, that's my feeling.
Yeah.
I don't know that we should wait too long before we post it on our Discord or Twitter or forum. I think we're going to I mean, I feel like that one's like posting on our Twitter, people who follow us is even more relevant than people who applied to Gibbeth. Do you see what I mean? Like if people are already following us and paying attention, or they're on our forum or they're on our Discord, then I think those people are probably, maybe a better, like already interested in showing interest and, have been paying attention than people, for example, who've applied to Gibbeth from a job board post.
Yeah,
Just
I see what you mean.
thought.
Yeah, and just building on that, I think the same thing. If you stage it out, then there's always this wonder, like if we just closed it up with the first circle, be like, what if there were some people out there who would have been really excited and would have been great candidates, but we just never found them, That would be a shame. And I think, similarly, like the folks at Gitcoin have offered to help. Like, I mean, I think there are some allies we have out there who are really well positioned to find some of these particular types of talents. And pulling them in early into the process would really increase our likelihood of finding great candidates, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the way I see this that is like like pros and cons. I think we would definitely be in a better position to find better candidates, but on the other hand, we are also positioned to get tons of candidates that might not be a good fit, and that just translates in workload for the team, right? And kind of like reducing scope in other priorities that we might have, right? So. I mean, I think we could do it if we all prefer that's the way. We can do that. Just kind of like acknowledging that it might take more work to go through all these type of applications and really taking the time to review all the CVs without any extra filter. What I was just trying to bring here was just this idea of maybe we can get some recommendations or some. There's another word, but I forgot. Like, yeah, basically people that could be recommended, or people that we know in our closest circles that could be a good fit in order to avoid that and try to move faster with this process. But yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to bring it here to get feedback, and And if we all think this is the best way to do it all at once, I'm down to do that.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that sentiment that it's going to be a lot of work to sort of to do that first screening, and then, but I don't know that it behooves us not to do that work. And perhaps we can resort to something like, for these next few weeks, we have like a 2-hour session. Everyone just gets on a
Sorry.
call, goes through the.
You're still sharing your screen, Gideon?
Me? Oh,
Gideon, just so you know.
Gideon, you're still sharing your screen.
Sorry, Tam. Yes, go ahead.
No, it's no problem. So what was I saying? I'm just kidding. No, it'll come back to me. Yes. So I think I think it behooves us to do that work. And I think what we do is we find a solution to like divide and conquer. Maybe it's like, hey, in the next 4 weeks, we're expecting there just to be a lot of HR, like just to be a lot of, having to go screen CVs, have a discussion. We sort of like start, like get this hiring committee launched and conversations happening, and sort of like make it very procedural so that we can tackle it easily and sort of tackle it together. And the second thing I wanted to say was what? I forget. No. If it comes to me, I'll hop in. Okay. Oh, yes, got it. Maybe we can hire some of Heather, like some portion of Heather's workload over the next 4 or 5 weeks, something like that, to do the pre-screenings. And I feel like she's pretty well attuned with some very basic guidance, like some simple guidance and like what to look for from us. I think she could do a really good job since she's very familiar with the space already.
That's a really good idea. I agree. Yeah, and I really like this what you're saying. If we could go through this process more as a collective and support on kind of like bring our attention to this as a team, I think that'd be great. Yeah, I was also a bit worried, like thinking, okay, if this is all gonna fall on me, how do I do it to try to reduce that workload and also keep it efficient at the same time, right? But as a team, things change. So, yeah.
I'm totally willing to help with this, and I actually I was going over to my email to look for a process that I did with this nonprofit. We hired a executive director, and then I got distracted by the subscription thing. But there actually was a really good process that we came up with, and I will after the meeting I'll see if I can find this. And I mean, we went through a lot of candidates, but we actually came up with a fairly decent approach for doing it pretty quickly. And it was work, but actually not that bad. And it's part of the reason why I think it's important for us to open it up wide. What we found actually was that initial push is really important because psychologically, there's something about opening up wide and having it be like news, like kind of a cool thing, rather than just dripping it out, like having it be something that's like, wow, this thing just opened up. That's cool. This looks really cool. Like that helps it to go broad. And then you reach people who you might not have reached through existing channels. And we found, in our case, we found some really good candidates. We ended up with somebody who was kind of close to us. It was just like one network away, but we ended up getting some great candidates. And at the end of the process, we felt like, you know what, we did our very best. We exposed this to lots of different diverse communities, and the person we ended up with is the right person. So I'll see if I can find out.
That'd be great. Yeah, that sounds really good. I'm all up for going through this process. Yeah, sounds really good. If you have any other like specific comments, like feel free to include them in the doc. Like there's also a job board that I already created that's part of our Notion public page. There's the Google form that you can take a look at. And basically the idea, the next stage will be just to have this series of interviews. So like 3 interviews, one that could be with me, and then I'm suggesting like this type of structure that maybe Gideon, if you're willing, you like to take one, and maybe Tam or NT. What I was thinking is that maybe depending on the position, if it's for example the programs person, maybe NT could take on that interview, and if it's the ecosystem dev, maybe Tam you'd be interested in taking it on. This is again just kind of like a suggested structure for interviews. With YGG, I mean, he was super willing, or he is super willing to help. But as he kind of like has decided to kind of like take a step from the team and to focus on other things right now, I'm not entirely sure how. I mean, we could do it, but I don't know how beneficial. Not saying that it would harm the process in any way. I'm just saying like might be better candidates to taking on that interview that are closer related to either the team or to the position in the case of NT. So I'm just going to try to move quicker so we have time to jump into the next item. Just going to try to finish this in the remaining 3 minutes that we have. So there's that stage. Again, feel free to add comments or add feedback in the doc. And then is the final selection and offer. So we could review like the people that we, after the interviews, we think are good candidates. We can take that conversation into TEC, and we can decide there if we, have if we provide a gentle negative. I really like how Tam framed that, or if we actually make an offer to the candidate. To do that, there's also this other doc, a work agreement template that I've also been working on. We can use that as this document or as this offer, and as a document also to use for the future, kind of like, yes, like a basic work agreement that we can revisit every once in a while. And then the last stage would be just kind of like trying to put together some basic onboarding. I mean, the reality is that we don't have anything like build up here, but I think just having at least an introductory call, trying to talk a bit more in detail about what the team's culture, the principles, and more details about how we work could be really beneficial for that person, as well as maybe providing some basic resources about the TEC and important documentation that they should be aware of based on their position. And the last point is, as part of this work agreement and also as part of the interview process, it will be important to mention to the candidates this idea of the trial period, 2 months of trial period, and we review and then we just make a decision, and things continue that way. The last thing that I wanted to bring, maybe, I don't know, in this last minute, maybe the last round of comments, there's this question about if we are taking this kind of like more formal process and these more formal interviews and work agreements, what should we tell the candidates? Comparing DAOs and traditional organizations, would we be able to tell them, okay, this work agreement, or we can secure you a full-time position for 6 months or for a year, or maybe that's not the case, and we say, well, this is a DAO, so we actually have a funding proposal every 4 months, and things are always changing, so we can't assure or secure too much on this side of how long would this kind of like work agreement would last. I don't know, I'm still a bit unsure on this, so I would like to hear you some maybe like round of comments, and then we can move on to the next topic.
I mean, in general, I think honesty is always the right approach. And we could word the challenges, and as you mentioned, how the team is funded by community vote. I think that makes a lot of sense to be very clear about that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we can't make any promises of how long the position will be around, but this is a DAO, right? This is a DAO land. I mean, I think it's kind of uncertain. But I think that it's the best way to handle that is to share what our strategy is and why we're bullish about the strategy. It's the narrative, right? And that these two positions will be critical to making that narrative work. So a lot of it is in their own hands, really. Success.
Yeah, I agree. Those are really good points. I think motivation, it will be a key component to try to bring like the right candidates and the right alignment with the strategy that we have in place, and in a way also our mission and our purpose and our values as a commons, right? So yeah, those will be key factors. Okay, well, if there are not any other comments from people, I mean, feel free again to share async feedback in the doc. I'll probably have this still open for feedback maybe today and probably tomorrow. And yeah, then we can continue moving. And with this, I'll just stop here. Thank you, Gideon, for sharing screen. And now we can move into the next agenda topic of the business model and this amazing spreadsheet that you've been building. So I'll just pass it on to you.
Okay, thanks, Bear. Nice job on pulling that process together. Yeah, this is going to be great. I'm so excited to get going on that. Okay, so this model was something that Bear started actually, and after he and I talked, I started thinking we needed to embed a little bit more of an income focus, like get a little bit more specific on the sources of income, and then started trying to kind of make it be more variable driven, because the price of optimism of OP is such a big factor on it, just changes everything. Right now it's at 2.3, which is kind of like where things break even, or they're pretty close. But if that price goes up to 4, then the picture gets a lot more rosy. Then on Friday in the TEC call, Griff and Mark Liberati had some suggestions about how to make this a little bit more interactive, and I incorporated those. So I just wanted to, I don't want to go through all the details of this model. I will, actually, I'm going to put a link in the chat so you all can just jump to this if you want. You can feel free to hack on this, but please don't hack on it right now. What I recommend, just so that we're all using the same numbers when I'm walking through this with you, but if you do want to play with this, maybe just make a copy of your own and just hack on it as a separate spreadsheet. It's all, there are no external links or anything like that, so nothing's going to break. I think the things that I just wanted to accomplish today is go through some of the changes or kind of the basic assumptions in this model, and then touch on some of the conclusions, and then not go through all of the questions, but there are a couple of key questions that I think are worth touching on. The first assumption is that this is something, like what would we use this for? Well, we were talking about this at the outset of the call. This isn't meant to be like a perfect predictor of like the future, but I think it's something that we can come back to over time and tweak as we get more information about our success with various grants and things like that. So that's a key one. One of the other things in this is there's kind of a basic assumption about how money flows, and it's basically this pretty simple model where we fund projects through the quadratic funding process, probably on Gitcoin, the ones that succeed eventually do some type of round where we're just taking some of the top performers, and maybe we do that as our own retro PGF, like run by the TEC. There are some options for doing that. And then the idea is that when you submit to the TEC for retro public goods funding, you're also agreeing to roll up your impact into the TEC so that the TEC can then submit that to Optimism for retro PGF funding. And so the TEC would get those funds back and they would roll back into the common pool. That's the basic idea. And then at a certain point, the group gets to decide whether they want to then just do the whole thing over again and submit to TEC for retro PGF, or they can decide to go on their own and submit directly to Optimism. But that's the basic model, is that we would just keep finding more, newer projects that need some help to kind of get up and running, and we would feed them through this process. So that's the basic assumption here that is baked into this model. And so money comes out of the common pool through basically this part of the spreadsheet here. And these are different, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but these are different assumptions. These are different. One is the conservative scenario, 2 is kind of intermediate, and 3 is optimistic. So in this intermediate one, you can see that the QF, this is basically, pink is data driven and yellow is you can input directly. And so this is driven from some assumptions over here that basically say 3 QF rounds at 25K each, right? And so that shows up as 75K. So basically what's happening here is you have, this number, this amount of money going through, out of the common pool, this and this coming out of the common pool, and then being compensated, hopefully later, by Optimism through a retro PGF grant. So I'm going to stop there for just a second, see if there are any questions with this basic, because this is kind of like the basic business model here, just to see if there's any questions or comments.
I have one question, but just to clarify on my understanding, where it says common pool, I see a description of multiple tokens. So now the common pool has multi-collateral with different tokens. I thought, or are we just using Rocket Pool ETH? Or Rocket Pool ETH is just a fraction of the common pool?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So this was another piece of the feedback was, hey, it'd be great to put some initial attempt at modeling the treasury in here. So why are there other tokens showing up? Well, one is that we're going to be getting a fair amount of OP coming into the common pool. So that's the first thing. So right now it's just DAI pretty much. But at a certain point, we're also probably going to want to hold TEC for a variety of reasons. One is because in this model, this is one of the other assumptions, is that all payouts are, aside from staff and even a portion of the staff, we can pay out as TEC. We will want to hold some TEC so we can do payouts in TEC more easily. And also there may be some upside because the TEC price is so low right now. So these are some things that we're going to want to test. And then there will be some, the Rocket Pool ETH is in the reserve, but I can't remember how this works, but there will be some increases in that will be like the reserve will be increasing as the value of the Rocket Pool ETH goes up. And I don't want to go into the details of this right now because I'm not really the right person I don't know enough about that, but there will be some, I was talking to Sean about this, there will be some small amount of, or maybe Tam, you have some insights into this, but that will be generating some Rocket Pool ETH and that's going to need to go into someplace. And so this is just saying it could go into the common pool. So the bigger driver is more the OP and the TEC.
I have another question. Have we identified some of the missions that we can target to on optimism? There's this cool spreadsheet where we can like see all the missions, and it'd be really cool. I don't know if that's already been done, but to know which of these missions the TEC is going to apply to.
We have not done that yet with the existing missions. The assumption here is that we are going to try to pitch a mission, a token engineering centric mission is
this season, just to contextualize, this season is working differently on optimism. Before, you pitched your mission and you said what you wanted to do, but in this season they are making mission requests. So what is happening is that there are requests that are already either being voted or approved or in draft, that then once that the mission request is approved, you apply as if it was an RFP, a request for proposal. So yeah, instead of proposing something, we need to see what is being proposed and see what can we help build.
Yeah. So what this is talking about is not the mission grants for this round, but this is saying, let's see if we can lobby the OP like badge holders and see if we can get a sponsor to, we can still look for the existing ones and we should do that. But this is looking at, for the fall, how do we try to get one that's really focused on token engineering? Because that's how we would do something like what's in here, which is this liquidity pool. And the biggest thing is this thing that Mark was proposing, which is this bounties program. So we should look at that spreadsheet and comb through to see if there's any opportunities in the nearer term. But this is like for the fall when they do the next missions grants. Can we lobby and get can we get somebody to sponsor something that's focused on token engineering? Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, the proposing time for this season ended like 2 weeks ago, and now they are moving from the ones that are like being voted for, and yeah, it's just that okay. I know that maybe for the future we can work on a mission request, but right now, even if there's not like a proper mission request proposed by us, maybe there's something that we can take out of this. And something that I also see is that some of them can have like multiple applicants, so it doesn't have to be like the whole full of the proposed amount, but it can be a fraction, and maybe it's something that we are already doing and or planning to do, and it's just like receiving additional funds for the things that we are already doing.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Agreed. Yeah, we will look at that spreadsheet. I think that's a good idea.
Just so that we don't go too far off what I think might be you wanted to achieve, Gideon. It's a really good thing that you brought up, Sawanka, and I'm just going to drop it as an issue on the sprint board so it doesn't get lost. But I know we only have 15 minutes left, and I think Gideon wanted to do some hacking on the spreadsheet together, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it would be good to go to dive back into it. Well, I have that up, and we'll look at it later. Thank you, Wonka. So that's the basic model. That's the most important thing for people to understand. Is basically we're advancing funds out of the common pool to do these grant rounds like we've done in the past, but then we're targeting more at the OP ecosystem and hoping that by doing that, the OP funding that we'll get will be at least what we got last time, and hopefully that's what this scenario is the intermediate scenario is that we would do another 60K OP, and this scenario is that we would double that. Okay, going on. The other thing about this model is this is the part that feels the most risky to me because we really haven't talked about it. Mark and I are going to be talking tomorrow about this one, the bounties. So this would be part of the mission thing if we were able to succeed in that. This would be basically targeting bounties that simultaneously help the OP ecosystem and advanced token engineering. And that would also include some funding for a token engineering reputation service. I'm going to say in quotes service, and then liquidity pool. Unlike that last one, this would be money that would come in first, and then we would spend it, right? So that's like a slightly different model. So if we didn't get this, then we wouldn't have these expenses, and so it's not that risky in this. I mean, it's not a perfect match here, but it's pretty close. The other basic assumption about this is that this model is very heavily driven by philanthropy, by optimism philanthropy, like the grants, right? There is some interesting thing going on here, which is that because all of the payouts are in TEC, the tributes actually could be relatively significant. You can see here that, in the more likely scenario, it could be like 30K of program tributes or close to 30K of program. This is all in DAI, by the way. 30K of program tributes. So, that starts to spin the token utility, like it starts to get the economy going by driving more transactions. And there's even one here for staffing tributes, but that's pretty small because of the assumptions over here of how much of the staffing pay is in TEC. But I think the thing that's important to recall here or focus on is that those transactions are still a tiny fraction of the overall income that's coming in. So, and then the other thing so that's kind of the revenue, it's the vast majority is grants coming in from OP and other sources, and the vast majority of that is OP. And then some transactional, basically tribute revenue. And then most of these expenses up here are outlays of grants and bounties. And then there's a little bit of like development work here and some other, and then a liquidity pool of like 20K in this medium scenario. And then this is the thing that I'm going to be working with Bear and Tam on this week, so that we can lock down on some salary ranges or compensation ranges. This is basically looking at the amount of work, and it's got some assumptions about the hourly rate. So we can change some of these assumptions: hourly rate and number of hours per month. I'm using kind of like this approach, which is like, what's the volume? I'm still trying to think if this is the best way to do this, but I wanted to get some way to look at kind of like a volume of grants that are going through, volume of grants and bounties, and use that as kind of a intuition for like how many people we would need in order to handle that volume. So this is the part that feels the funkiest to me of the model right now, because that's very subjective. But using that, it kind of, I use that to kind of triangulate to what we are currently thinking in terms of like the staffing. These are full-time equivalents. So that means 40 hours a week. So this would be 1.5 for the program, 1.5 people at 40 hours per week. So this would be 60 hours a week of program time, and a little bit more than that for the ecosystem. So it's not just one person. This is, as we've talked, there are some other roles that we could fund with that that would be really part-time. I'll stop here and see if there are any other questions or comments.
Just my usual comment, to not only create a category for TE related projects, but also maybe we can support commons related initiatives and culture projects within the rounds. It can be a percentage of the already thought budget. It can be smaller, but I just don't want us to take that component out of the importance of this redistribution mechanism for projects that are not only building on tech but also on culture and on commons.
Yeah, understood. I think that where that will probably show up is some of the reputation work. That would probably be the first place where that would show up, I'm thinking.
I mean, my comment is this is really exceptional. So great to see it so clearly thought through and in so much detail. I don't know that there's much other feedback I would give. You've explained it really well. I guess the next question is, what is the next step forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the next step, I think that the most practical thing we can use this for over this next week is to just stretch some of these assumptions a bit, just whack on this a little bit and see with the staffing numbers, where does it break? Where does it become unsustainable? And see, both like what are the rates that we can afford to pay. Bear's going to get some feedback on kind of like more competitive, like market type feedback, and then this will be more like budgeting. And between those, I think that's the first thing that I think is what we would use this for.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. Go ahead, finish.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I absolutely agree. And so much of this is projections and dependent on things falling into place in a certain way. So I think it's a really good idea for sort of. I mean, I feel like we can be very sure that these numbers are all going to change, every month as circumstance change. But I think it's really a good like guardrails for us to think about the spending. Yeah, this is incredibly helpful, Gideon.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's just so important about models like this is you start to see, when you start to play around with this, you start to get an intuitive sense of like where the key variables are. I mean, this one's obvious, but like look what happens when I pump that up to 5. Like all of a sudden the common pool ends up at 1.1 million at the end of next year, right? If the OP price goes, and stays up that high, right? So that's clearly a huge variable. Whereas like here, we're just adding like 17K to the common pool if we keep it at 2.3. So that's one. But I think that there's some other things that kind of came out of this, which is, well, we can, yeah, we're running out of time. But one of the other things that came is that it's like, oh, we're not going to actually find out about the next round of OP until relatively late in the year. So what does that mean for our hiring strategy? And, I think what it means is that there's basically kind of 2 waves of hiring. One essentially boils down to this intermediate strategy. It's basically kind of like what this model suggests is that there is a path forward based on us essentially matching what we got last round. And if we just operated based on that, we would be good. And then if there's upside, if we see in the fall that there's upside, then we can start to kind of like tweak some of these assumptions about hiring and things like that. That was one of the other insights that came from playing around with this. So we're about out of time here. I guess the thing, again, an invitation for you to copy this and play around with it. I'm guessing that, as many of you probably won't want to do that because it's like, hey, we've got lots of things to do with our time. But if you do and you end up coming up with some insights, that would be great. And then the second thing is, I think Bear, maybe you and I today in our call, we can jam on this a little bit and maybe feed that back to you, Tam, in terms of some of the salary specific stuff. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, sounds perfect. Yeah, no, as always, Gideon, thank you for putting this together. Yeah, super helpful tool. And I think it's also, as a tool, I think it might be setting a precedent as well for DAO budgeting and planning, financial planning. So that's super interesting, a tool that we'll be using frequently. So that's cool. Okay, well, there's just 1 minute remaining. We'll jump into the this sprint planning, but monthly planning in this case. I'll share the agenda here in the chat. But if you have to jump, feel free to do so. Thank you, everyone, as always. Really productive meeting.
Thanks, Nate. One of the things, sorry, just as the last minute, and since we're all just rolling into the next call, just sort of with the last minute, one of the things that it also sort of jumps out from the spreadsheet is not so much related to like fiscal responsibility, but citizenship responsibility as a fairly, a healthy amount of TEC, of OP tokens, and how we participate in governance in OP. Whether it's, having a delegate or who do we delegate to. And I think there's some questions that open up, eventually, not immediately. So should we jump to sprint planning?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'm taking that as a yes.
Yes, take it.
Silence means yes. All right.